When a man ripped down the ceiling in his cellar, he found a box full of life-changing treasure. As the dust begins to settle around Imgur user Brannick12, something catches his eye. He's just pulled down the ceiling in his home cellar, hoping to give the room a new lease of life. And there, tucked away between two beams, sits a green and gray tin box. Before he can continue with his renovation plans, the DIYer simply has to see what treasure is hidden inside. Brannick12 was so excited about his discovery that he wanted to share it with the online community. The then 35-year-old DIY enthusiast was renovating his family home, and as he'd already finished the first and second floors of his property, he decided it was high time to move on to the basement. So, heading down below, Brannick12 began work on the eeriest part of his 1940s home. And judging by the photos he uploaded, it was really no wonder the DIYer was so desperate to get started with remodeling his basement. The walls were absolutely covered in what he jokingly referred to as wall art, but there was something else he decided to tackle first. Perhaps in an attempt to make the space feel more light and airy, Brannick12 wanted to pull down the ceiling and expose the original wood beams. So he did just that, making a lot of mess in the process. And when he looked up after the initial crash, an object hidden away in the alcoves caught his eye. It was the green and gray tin. Not only was the Imgur user understandably very excited to see what was inside, but he was also very keen to share his discovery online. Writing on Imgur, he reported, "Cool, a treasure. I must document this for Imgur. It's about time I contributed to the community." First, though, Brannick12 made sure to capture the moment as if he'd been documenting it in real time. To show the box as it was when he'd initially found it then, he had to place it back up in the ceiling before taking some photos. Imagine how intrigued you'd be if you came across this during a renovation project. But what was inside the dusty box? And would its contents actually contribute to Brannick12's life in some way? Well, after removing the mysterious object from the beams, he took it outside for closer inspection. The DIYer was soon joined by his wife, and the curious couple made a breathtaking discovery that would change their lives forever. Tied together by a piece of string, the box was in almost perfect condition. It did, however, have some wear and tear on the handle, perhaps from the previous owner carrying it around. Though, to be honest, the couple were probably much more intrigued about what was on the inside than the state of the outside. But before cracking it open, Brannick12 decided to search his home for a banana. Though it wasn't because he was hungry or anything. Instead, it seems Brannick12 was trying to find another object to place next to the box so that his followers would be able to get an idea of its size. In the end, it looks as though a baby-sized banana toothbrush was the best he could muster up. Still, it helped him to document the whole process. With the banana toothbrush in place, Brannick12 began to unravel the string that was holding the tin together. It's difficult to imagine the level of anticipation both he and his wife must have been feeling at that moment. The box could really have contained anything. All he knew was that it likely hadn't been opened for some time. If Brannick12 was about to discover treasure in his home, he certainly wouldn't have been the first. In 2015, for instance, a Phoenix couple discovered a 50-year-old safe behind their kitchen wall, containing, among other things, $50,000 in cash. And 2 years earlier, the owners of a Norwegian home found a long-lost Vincent van Gogh painting in their attic. Would Brannick12 be so lucky? Anticipating its contents, Brannick12 theorized on Imgur as to what the box would reveal. He wrote, "It has something inside, but not heavy like coins or gold bars. Might get lucky though, could be old sports cards. That couldn't be a bad discovery. Vintage soccer and baseball cards can certainly fetch a pretty penny." Finally then, he opened the lid. As Brannick12 prized open the tin box, he found what appeared to be wax paper covering the secret stash. There was no doubt it had been hidden away for ages, perhaps even decades. In fact, as Brannick12 later explained in a post comment, the first owner of the 1940s house was a lady in her 50s. So could she have left a little something inside the box, packed it away, and forgotten about it? Whatever the case, Brannick12 found that the contents were wrapped in a sheet of vintage newspaper. This page from the Cleveland Plain dealer featured a 50s pinup being taught how to bowl with the help of some dapper-looking guys. And classic advertising straplines claimed that a light smoke is better for you, and that baldness may be prevented. The other side of the retro newspaper featured an equally eclectic mix of stories and ads. The top left of the broadsheet included a report on the Stanley Cup, which it described as professional hockey's most treasured prize. If Brannick 12 had known what he was about to find inside the tin, he might have considered the wording of that story to be strangely prophetic. Of course, the reporter responsible for writing that story could never have known how the paper would one day be used. A close-up image from Brannick 12 revealed that this particular edition of the Cleveland Plain Dealer was published on March 25, 1951, and he surmised this must be near the time the box was hidden. Though as fascinating as the newspaper was, it wasn't actually the star find. Behind it lay 3 packages, each individually wrapped in wax paper, and the green tinge coming through the wax definitely hinted at what was hidden. Brannick 12 feverishly predicted the discovery on Imgur. He wrote, "There's money in here. I'm guessing $1,000 or more. Is that a 20?" After carefully unwrapping the contents of the first batch, his predictions proved right. Inside was an enormous wad of early century $20 bills. Supposing that the other 2 packages contained the same, then Brannick 12 estimated his potential haul. He wrote, "There may be a couple thousand here. We're freaking out. This doesn't happen to us." But the couple's good luck was only just beginning. Unwrapping the next package, Brannick 12 and his wife found that they didn't contain any $20 bills. No, lucky for them, it was in fact full to the brim of $50 notes. And the third batch? You guessed it, a nice chunky wad of $100 bills, all in pretty neat condition. Jackpot. Amazed, the pair quickly totaled up the amount. Final tally? They believed they were sitting on a fortune of about $20,000. Not bad for an afternoon's work. But then, on closer inspection, Brannick 12 realized that all of the bills were early issues, dating from 1928 to 1934, and some had brown markings on them or were stamped gold certificate. Could these bills be rare? If that was the case, there was a good chance that some of them may actually be worth more than their face value. Bills with desirable serial numbers, such as identical or sequential digits, typically command eye-watering fees. Some gold certificate bills have also become collectibles after being made redundant in 1933. It was looking good for the couple, but little did they know at this stage that another big discovery was just around the corner. Their basement was the gift that kept on giving. After spending the following week getting the bills appraised and speaking with lawyers about what to do next, Brannick 12 went back to work in the cellar. And just as his excitement was likely wearing off, he discovered another box tucked away in the ceiling. What were the chances? Though it was pretty much identical to the first box, Brannick 12 claimed that this one felt a lot heavier. Would this be full of cash too? First things first, Brannick 12 set the box aside and cleared the ceiling to see if there were any more boxes lying around. But alas, this was to be the second and last discovery. While the boxes were practically identical to the naked eye, there was one slight difference between them. This box had vents on the side, allowing Brannick 12 a glimpse at what awaited him inside. And while that narrow view tantalizingly teased a similar discovery to the first box, he couldn't open it just yet. You see, Brannick 12 wanted to wait for his wife to come home so that the lucky couple could prise open the box together. In the meantime, he set about cleaning the box, removing the thick layer of dust that had enveloped it over the years. And all that was left to do then was wait. The hours presumably felt like an eternity. Eventually, Brannick 12's wife did return home from work, and the pair quickly set up about opening the new box. Much to their surprise, this container was once again filled to the brim with cash. Yes, $20 bills were tucked behind yet more sheets of vintage newspaper, neatly stacked together and filling the entire space of the box. Staggeringly, after the couple had sold off some of the rarer bills, the total haul came to about $45,000. The pair, unsurprisingly, posted their story of good fortune on Imgur, and while some members, jealous perhaps, thought it could be a hoax, the majority were delighted for the couple. One hilarious member commented, "Nice haul. All I ever found was a dozen dead squirrels and one nasty old lady wig." couple have now paid the money into their bank and it will go towards repaying their mortgage. They had even been hopeful of relocating to a country home sometime in 2017. So what was once perhaps an aging lady's rainy day fund has now changed their lives forever. You never know what's hiding in the basement. One lady who went on Antiques Roadshow found this out herself. But the treasure hiding in the woman's basement was much less obvious than a stack of cash. Instead of a tin, she had found a dusty old book. Having absolutely no idea what it was worth, the Salt Lake City resident decided to get it looked at by an expert. Ken Sanders has been an appraiser on the popular daytime TV show Antiques Roadshow for a decade. According to the Deseret News, to him the meaning of a rare book is a book I have and you don't. But then a woman from Salt Lake City showed him something astounding. Sanders is a significant figure in the world of antiques. Best known for his appearances on Antiques Roadshow, he's a true fount of knowledge, particularly when it comes to rare books. Indeed, he's been passionate about books ever since he was a teenager. By the time Sanders was 17, he had already started his impressive book collection. And from there, he continued to grow his portfolio of rare books even further. But he also spent his time chasing book thieves and even playing a part in some high-profile sting operations. So there's no doubt that he knows his stuff. And that's why Sanders is such an important part of Antiques Roadshow. People turn up specifically to seek out his expertise when they think they might have found something valuable. And in one particular episode, which aired in April 2017, Sanders was presented with something very special indeed. The item was brought to him by a woman who had no idea of its value. Straight away, though, Sanders could see that she was in possession of something remarkable. The woman appeared on the Salt Lake City episode of the show and told Sanders that she had found a book in the basement. It belonged to her great-grandmother, whom the lady described as having been religious. Looking more closely at the book, it was clear that it was extremely old. The pages of the tiny book were discolored and a little tattered, but an inscription on the front was nonetheless clear to see. Turned out that the message had been written by her great-grandmother when the book itself was already 104 years old. The antique book had obviously been passed down for a few generations before it finally appeared on the Antiques Roadshow, and Sanders was very surprised to see it. "I was quite shocked when the lady brought it up to the table," he told the Deseret News in April 2017. The reason that Sanders was so surprised was the rarity of the type of book in front of him. He could immediately tell that it was a selection of hymns. Looking at the front of the book, Sanders also noted that it had been published back in 1844. Then, having studied the book more closely, Sanders began to tell the woman a little more about it. He started by stating that it was a hymn book for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, LDS. Then he went on to reveal how rare it was to see one of them these days. Sanders said that there was one main reason why book experts didn't often see hymnals dating as far back as 1844. He explained how the members of the LDS Church didn't tend to keep their hymn books in circulation after they'd become a little tattered from general usage. Instead, they'd usually throw the old hymnals away when they didn't look quite so pristine anymore and then print new ones. As a result, the very first LDS hymn books have become hard to get hold of all these years later. And of course, the way that the world of antiques generally works is that rare items tend to be worth a lot. Still, few people could have suspected Sanders to give the woman in possession of the LDS hymn book quite such an astounding figure at the end of his evaluation. Given that only a few hymnals from the 1830s and 1840s have survived, Sanders was bound to give the woman a generous estimation of the value of her hymn book, and it was printed in Bellows Falls, Vermont, which made it even more valuable. But when the book expert revealed the hymn book's true worth, the woman was totally overwhelmed. Sanders told her that the LDS hymnal was likely to fetch between $40,000 and $50,000 if she sold it. He was able to estimate the figure based on the sale of a similar hymnal only a few years earlier. When the woman heard how much her antique was likely to be worth, she covered her mouth with her hands and let out a gasp. She clearly never expected it to be quite so valuable. "Really?" she asked the expert. "Oh my gosh," she exclaims, taking a moment to come to terms with the news. After all, the book had been just sitting in the basement for years. She even looked as though she might cry at one point. Before she composed herself enough to ask Sanders an important question. "What do I do with it?" she asked, still seemingly on the verge of losing control of her emotions. The expert's advice was to keep it somewhere very secure, perhaps in a safety deposit box. But people who watched the Antiques Roadshow segment on YouTube had other suggestions for her. "Sell, sell, sell," one viewer commented, while others were touched by the woman's reaction. "How sweet, I teared up watching this," wrote another YouTube user. Someone else described the way that the woman took the news as heartwarming to watch. Whether she ended up selling the hymnal or not remains to be seen. However, at the end of the segment, she asked Sanders to whom she should hand it down, suggesting that she planned to keep it within the family for generations to come. After all, it may well become even more valuable after another few decades sitting idly in the basement.